We have an unusual assortment of conversation today. The two E's, election system and employment law. This is the Mortgage Banking live stream. Welcome. This is the Mortgage Banking live stream. Today is November 16th, 2020. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic weekend. I'm Troy at Garris Horn. We are here to educate, to connect you, and to entertain as well. We're going to talk a little bit about business today. We're going to talk a little bit about politics, and we're going to talk a little bit about regulation. And as we get started here, I just want you to know, as always, if there are conversations or topics that you want addressed, you just let me know. You can shoot me an email. You can send me a text. My contact information is down below this YouTube channel in the description. And just shoot those over to me and we will make sure that we get those on the air. As people will tell you, I read every one of those. And I personally, and I enjoy them. And, you know, they come in all different kinds of formats. And it's always good information. And we'll try to get anything reasonable that you put on here, that you ask for to get put on here, and make sure that your topics get addressed. A couple of shouts out as we get started. James Eiley, thank you, James, for the kind words and the support. Always love this. Anil Mehta, Anil, it's been a while. My brother from another mother, and Anil, hope everything is good with you. Thank you for your support. Chris Tamman, Chris, great seeing you here as well, and I do appreciate the support that we get from everybody. Just such great people involved in our industry, and such warm people, such friendly people. Really makes this even more enjoyable than it already is. The TMBA's Symposium and Reverse Mortgage Day starts tomorrow and runs into the next day till Wednesday. And so if you haven't already registered, probably everyone has, that is important. But if you haven't already registered, make sure to do that. That's a fantastic organization. Always some good speakers, always some good content. I think if you take a look at that website, you will see that they have a great lineup and some great information there. You definitely want to participate in that. And a couple of items here as we roll in. Well, let's talk about business for a moment. So the pandemic has changed the way that people think about housing. And there are reports that since the March era of this year, the numbers of people that are looking for multi-generational housing has increased substantially. People looking outside of the major urban areas has increased. Transactions have been delayed, especially in the beginning, before people really figured out how to do business in this era. And people that are reporting homes that are too small seriously went up. I think in part because we have a lot of people that are working from home, people that weren't working from home previously, sometimes multiple people working from home, children sometimes working from home. And so all of this has caused National Association of Realtors to report that they're finding that people are saying that their homes are too small. So in recent years, people have thought about a change in the market of people staying away from the suburbs, staying in urban areas. And I think what this is suggesting is that, as always, the market continues to evolve. People prognosticate and try to figure out where the market's going to go. It's important to do that. Economists do that all the time, but any economist worth his weight or her weight in salt would tell you that they can't tell you what's going to come next, because the situation is always evolving. They make good, solid, educated guesses, but that's it. Mortgage Credit Availability Index. This comes out of the Mortgage Bankers Association, and another great organization. People know that I love the National MBA as well. And they have this index, the MCAI, the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. And the index suggests or indicates whether mortgage credit is tightening or loosening in terms of numbers of people and types of people that can get loans secured by real estate. and this is on the residential side that we're talking about at the moment. So the MCAI, the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, was up 2.3% for October. It's actually good news because in recent months there's been a suggestion of some tightening. There's still the forbearance issue that lays out there a little bit in the distance, and it keeps creeping ever and ever closer. Have to keep an eye on, but this is really good news. And again, just good solid data and information from the MBA. You can get this information from the MBA. You can shoot me an email or text, and I will send it over to you. And happy to provide information. Again, we're here to help connect you and also provide educational type information. A couple other shouts out. Thank you, Mark Wilson. I had Mark on the show recently, and a very good conversation about a lot of different things that are affecting LOs and the way that they're compensated, and other areas where LOs can get a company into trouble if the company is not well versed and not making sure that they have good infrastructure to support the LOs. Because LOs, and I love LOs, I'm a huge fan. In fact, I'm having lunch with one of my good LO friends tomorrow, and just fantastic people. But they're salespeople, right? And so you got to make sure that you have good infrastructure to support them. Anyway, thank you, Mark, for being on the show and talking through some of those issues with us. Kevin Peranio, Kevin, always fantastic to see you. Thank you. Good man. Joel Domage, Joel, great to see you here as well. Joey Gilpin, again, just, there are so many wonderful people here, and I just, it flatters me. It makes me feel honored to have the support of such great individuals in our area in this mortgage industry. It makes me proud to be in this industry, and we do appreciate it. Let's switch to politics for a second. Now, there is a lot going on in the political world at the moment, and we're going to talk about elections just briefly. So we especially these past numbers of years, we keep hearing about how the media is biased. It's always been biased. Truthfully, everybody knows that. It's been biased from day one, because anybody that it was reported, even 50 years ago, despite the notions that people have, even 50 years ago, you start out with a bias. I'm biased, you're biased. So wherever we start with a bias, and we should know that and recognize that and acknowledge that. But I think in the past, there was a notion that reporting and news tended to be less biased, and people and news tried to be as objective as possible. Now, it was either true or not true, depending on the particular medium involved and the particular individuals involved. Some of it was more sensational than others. But let's think about what the news is. The news is a vehicle for selling advertising. So that's what it is. It's a business, right? People like to think of the news as separate and not really a business. And of course, the media players themselves, they want you to think of them as not really selling you anything. But in the end, nobody works for free, right? And so it's a vehicle for selling advertising. And in today's world, with the internet, with all the blogging, with everything that goes on, it's difficult to get attention. It's difficult to keep viewers. And so the media, over time, necessarily has become more and more sensationalized and more opinionated, because that's what attracts viewers and keeps their attention. And so while I understand the criticism of the media, it's also probably not going to change. It can't change. In order for the companies, whether it's the television news or the online news, or even if you read the old-fashioned newspaper, they have to capture your attention and your interest. And so they have become more opinionated over time, and they've become a product of our culture, and that's the way that it is. Now, much of the media, as I think most people would agree, some will not, much of the media is liberal leaning. I think people can figure that out I think the media will tell you that they're not. They tell you that they're objective and non-biased, but in fact, that's just the way that it is. They tend to happen to be that way. There are certain other major media players out there. Fox is one that is definitely Republican or conservative leaning. And again, they'll tell you they're objective, and probably some of them try to be, but it just is what it is. But what has happened, I think, in the recent past is that the current administration has pointed out this particular bias and this particular sensationalization in the major media and in other media as well, of course. And the current president has an amazing ability, and you can hate him or love him or be neutral, it doesn't matter. He has an amazing ability to boil concepts and issues down into like a bumper sticker kind of a slogan, and he calls it fake news. I think of it more of as sensationalized news, and I see that for sure. I watch various different forms of different news channels. None of it very satisfying to me, except for the business news is focused a little more on stuff that I like day to day, anyways. But it really is very biased and unsatisfying when I watch the regular news for news stuff in the world. And I read the Wall Street Journal, and I read the Washington Post, and I read a variety of different other news sources, and I watch news. I'm in a way kind of news junkie. I read a lot of political news that is focused on politics. But nevertheless, in order to survive in this world, people gotta sell papers and sell media. That's just what they gotta sell, airtime. That's what they gotta do, and it's gonna be that way. Now, in the news, in the media, which again, most of the majors tend to be sort of liberal leaning, there is a lot of criticism against Trump for asking for a recount in this election, in particular in Pennsylvania, but lots of different types of these stories going on. And there's a lot of criticism, both about Trump and also about Republicans who are willing to let President Trump request those sorts of recounts. But what we have here instead, I understand that people have their leanings and their dogs in the fight, so to speak. But the thing is, this is not always a Republican thing. It's not always a Democrat thing. It could be an independent thing. What we have here is a system that needs to be looked at, and there's no harm. There's nothing wrong with somebody saying that we need to take a look at the system and make sure that it works, make sure that there are not flaws. And I've noticed that the media recently stopped saying, as it's been saying for a long time, that there's no evidence of fraud. It used to be a categorical statement. And now it's leaning to what I hear more frequently is there's no evidence of major fraud or major impropriety. And what that's suggesting to me, and what I think we have seen this time around, and based on my own experience, I reported on that, my own experience trying to vote here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area just recently, there are issues. And we have an antiquated system, a system that doesn't seem to have much of interconnectedness. There's a system that people don't really understand and are starting to question. And that's actually a healthy thing. It's not a problem. It is not a bad thing for somebody to say, hey, there could be an issue here. Let's look at it. Let's analyze it. Let's make sure that it makes sense and that it's protected. And if any regulator, if any mortgage company, if any CPA firm came in and took a look at our system and saw the antiquated, discombobulated, disconnected kind of a system that we have, they would put us out of business. If I were a mortgage company, I had a system that was this antiquated and incoherent, and I couldn't prove up results, and the CFPB came in, or some other regulator came in for that matter, they would shut me down. They just would. It is an important aspect, and I'm not talking about this particular election. The cards are sort of dealt here, and it'll be whatever it's going to be. And I think I know where this is going to go. Personally, I think if I had to gamble, if somebody pointed a gun at my head and said, "Okay, you got to choose who's going to win here," I think I know where it's going to go. But what I'm saying is not that. I'm not criticizing that. What I'm saying is that we need to, as soon as this turn of events ends, we need to have people focused on making sure that our system improves and evolves in a way that is sound. I'll get off my soapbox here. That's important, though. It's important to me. It's important. It's not a Democrat thing, not a Republican thing, not an independent thing, not a Green Party thing. It's nothing. It's an American system issue that we need to fix holistically. Take a look at. Switch to regulation. Employment law. Employment laws frequently change at the turn of the year. A lot of times it's really just an increase in the minimum wage. So make sure that you're focused on that. If you are one of those companies that pay minimum wage to loan officers in particular, with some sort of a draw, make sure that you take a look at those, because a number of states have changes that are coming into effect. The same thing, it's probably a good time to take a look at that holistically across the board. Make sure that your exemption status hasn't changed for people. If you have people that you use as contractors, make sure that those rules haven't changed. There's been some developments there. And it's probably just a good time to take a look at your employment agreements and maybe your employment handbooks and employment policies and so on. And just make sure that you get a refresh, so that if you don't do it before then, at least by January 1, you have something in place that makes sense. The CFPB recently announced joint virtual hours. Actually, today announced joint virtual hours with Colorado AG. This is part of the American Financial Consumer Innovation Network that the CFPB is involved in. And the idea is to try to help people innovate in a way that is helpful to consumers and also good for business. And so Colorado and the CFPB have teamed forces for these virtual office hours, so that people can come in and talk to them jointly to see if there are products or ideas that might make sense, and that the regulators might think may be helpful to encourage. Now, of course, because of the election, we don't know exactly whether the people that are there currently involved in this will still be there come the turn of the year. Frequently, if there's a change of administrations, there's often, especially in a high-profile position like the CFPB director, there could be a change in the director and other people, especially the political levels. So not quite sure if that will continue, but nevertheless, it's an interesting development and one to keep an eye on. If you have some ideas, it's an interesting way to try to run ideas by the regulator, and you may want to do that. I'd also point out that the CFPB recently filed another lawsuit. This one against this particular one I'm talking about is against a company that was offering short-term loans for rideshare drivers. And what's interesting about this is not really, this isn't directly affecting mortgage. What I want to point out, though, is that the allegations here are UDAP allegations primarily, and UDAP has also been used by the CFPB a number of times over the years, but in particular, just recently, UDAP seems to be one of the vehicles of choice for the CFPB, and I think that's in part because the UDAP standards are so broad and are so amorphous that it's difficult to combat or resist a UDAP claim, just because it is largely amorphous and malleable, so that the agency can go at issues that the agency finds it doesn't like, without having to prove all the specific elements of one of the more precise types of laws. And so this seems to be a trend. And I reported recently, actually, here on both on the live stream and also on our blog, that there's been at least 9 consent orders with companies that were involved in VA lending on the advertising side, and these were primarily focused on UDAP. Anyway, so it's an area that you do want to be careful of. Again, the UDAP standard is a non-standard, really, and so you want to just make sure that you're keeping yourself in compliance with the other rules, and those will help you tamp down on UDAP risk. There's no way to get out of it entirely, but risk is risk, and if you can, you should try to avoid it. So thank you for today. A couple more thank yous here. Christina Sacco, thank you, Christina. Great to see you here. Mark Raskin, Mark, always good seeing you. Laura Brandeo, Laura, thanks so much. I don't know if you guys check out Laura's podcasts, but it's a great podcast. You definitely should check that out. Tracy Reed, just so many wonderful people here. I thank you. If you have any questions or comments, send those to me, and we will make sure that we take those into account as we put out future live streams. And we will definitely try to get anything that's helpful on. Hope this is helpful. Share this with your friends. Give me a thumbs up, or to let us know that you're enjoying this, or that it's helpful. Or again, send us in something that you want to see on here. If you think we deserve it, subscribe. You'll be the first to know that the new one is here. And this is going to be a great week. Have a fantastic one. Best of business to you. This is the Mortgage Banking live stream. Peace.